Hello, I'm back with another chapter to read. I hope you guys like this chapter, and I'm gonna put the original link down in the description so you can read this to yourself. On with the fanfic. Chapter 1, A 15-Year-Old Secret. 14 years have passed since Izuku Midori awakened his quirk, fire breathing. He is now a student at UA, the most prestigious high school in all Masudasu, Japan. He met All Might and trained with him. To receive One for All, he entered UA when he was 14 years old, alongside his childhood bully and former friend Katsuki Bakugo. During the entrance exam, he used One for All to save one of his friends, Ochako Uraka, but broke his arm in the process as he had used One for All at 100%. It had been a year since he trained with his idol All Might and took the entrance exam. Izuku started to feel exhaustion all over his body, but didn't worry about it. During class, his back started to hurt. A lot of pain shot through his body. His head then started to really hurt. The whole entire class looked at him and started to worry. Even Izawa was concerned for his problem child, until Izuku let out a blood-curdling scream. Everything hurt and burned. His whole entire body felt like it was on fire. That is, until his mutation revealed itself. His wings split from his back. Long ice wing-like horns appeared on, and the ice wing spikes emerged from his back. This had the entire class freaking out, but Izuku didn't hear them, or Aizawa. Seeing this, Aizawa tried to erase his quirk on the young student, but nothing happened. Then, without anyone knowing it, the transformation was complete. Izuku woke up with a start, confused as to why he was on the floor. He looked down and saw that he had light green scales covering his eyes and under his eyes, as well as 2 light green frills under his ears and cheeks. His eyes had also changed due to the sudden mutation. They were now slitted like a cat's, and he had a long rainwing-like tail with ice wing spikes on it. His legs had shifted to accommodate his new form. Did his mom say something about him not being full human? Izuku thought, as he tried to stand up, only to fall back down as soon as he did. Izawa, seeing this, went to his problem child and bent down to his level. "Let's go see Recovery Girl," he said. "She can figure out what's happening to you." Aizawa helped Izuku up, but before they could take a step, Izuku passed out from exhaustion. Aizawa sighed in relief and annoyance. "I need someone to take Midoriya to Recovery Girl's office," he said to the students. Aizawa looked at Todoroki and Bakugo. "Bakugo, Todoroki, would you please escort Midoriya to Recovery Girl?" he said. Bakugo and Todoroki looked at each other and then back at Aizawa. "Fine," they both said. Todoroki nodded. "We'll take him." Bakugo and Todoroki picked up Izuku and carried him to Recovery Girl's office. Both Bakugo and Todoroki looked at each other in confusion and panic. Then they both nodded and went to pick up their friend. However, they soon realized that he had gotten taller, revealing the mutation and altering his height. "Tch, you dang nerd," Bakugo exclaimed, as he proceeded to put his arms under Izuku's armpits. "What have you gotten yourself into?" Bakugo asked, as he urged Todoroki to hold both his legs and his really large tail. Izawa just sighed, as he urged Ida to hold his wings and tail. But Izawa stopped him from doing anything. He said that he also gestured for Rurerika to use her zero gravity on Midoriya's wings, but also told her to go with the three of them. Ida, Ochako, Bakugo, and Todoroki ran to Recovery Girl's office, with Izuku in their grasp. They turned the corner, and Ochako saw that Midoriya looked a little bit cold. She saw something that shocked her, down to her very core. What she saw were Izuku's scales and horns changing colors, his hair changing the most out of everything on him. The mutations changing as if something's causing them to change. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the nurse's office for Izuku to get checked over and see what caused him to gain these weird mutations. Like the ones he had, the wings, the horns, all of it was just plain on weird. The mutations looked like a dragon's features, but what type of dragon was it? Recovery Girl's office. They ran into Recovery Girl's office with Izuku and were panicking about what happened to their friend. Ida yelled for Recovery Girl, "Recovery Girl! Midoriya passed out during class and something weird's happened to him." Well, when it did. "Oh no, I hope he didn't break his arm again," she said as she walked into the room. Then she went into panic mode. "Hurry, set him on the bed," she shouted as she hooked all sorts of wires and quirk detectors on him. Some of them were detecting if he had any illnesses or anything in him that might be causing him to change his body. Meanwhile, in Izuku's dream, when Izuku opened his eyes, he seemed to be in an endless void with the vestiges of One for All standing here, looking at what appeared to be All for One and his younger brother, Yoichi Shigaraki. Izuku could see that All for One was trying to force his brother a quirk. Izuku's eyes widened at this revelation. Then the scene of Afo and Yoichi dissipated into nothingness, the scene returning to the first vestige approaching him. But what confused Izuku the most was that both All for One and Yoichi had the same mutation as him, a frill on both sides of their faces, horns that were really long, and wings that were big and long. He also had a long tail that had weird spikes and curled at the end. Meanwhile, outside of Izuku's dream, Recovery Girl returned with both good and bad news. The 4 students looked at her with worried expressions. The good news is that he doesn't have any illnesses, Recovery Girl said, holding up a clipboard with Izuku's results. It's just genetics. And the bad news is, I don't know when he'll wake up, she said. And the 4 students, Bakugo, Ochako, Todoroki, and Tinya, widened their eyes in surprise. Recovery Girl continued. His cells are presumably changing because of the genetic chain that runs in Izuku's family. Bakugo knew something was different about Izuku, but he didn't know how serious it was. And it was related to Izuku's bloodline. Ochako asked, "Is there anything we can do?" She asked. Recovery Girl said, "We'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime," Recovery Girl asked them to keep him company and let him know that they were all there for him. The 4 students nodded, promised to do their best. Back in the dream. So, you are the 9th? The first vestige of Hafofa said, as Yorchi got his hand to Izuku's extended arm and hand. Everything happened so fast. The dream faded to reveal his quirk that had accidentally activated. Izuku was hyperventilating from the quirk activating by accident. Everyone in the room, even Shio, was shocked by the sudden quirk activation. In the young student's sleep, Izuku's lightened hair had changed to a color of panic and fear that meant white. It changed back to normal forked green color from before. As soon as Izuku calmed down, he noticed the 5 people in the room. Izuku was confused by the fact he was in the nurse's office. It hit him like a bag of rocks. After he had gotten his mutations, his whole body structure had changed. He had gotten his bones to shift to better suit his new mutation. Izuku had wanted to get up, but Shio had stopped him and said he needed to rest. No, young man, you need to rest for at least a day before you can continue your training. For the remainder of the day. Rest, she said as she walked away. Everyone remained silent until Bakugo spoke up. What the heck happened to you, you dang nerd? Bakugo asked without raising his voice. I don't know, Kachan, Izuku replied as he fiddled with the blanket he was covered in. Everyone remained silent until something changed within Izuku's body. His scales turned a dark color. His eyes changed to those of a nightwing. When the transformation was complete, Izuku looked at his scaled-covered hand in complete surprise. Guys, do you get that feeling that something bad is about to happen? As he said that, a feeling of dread washed over him and his eyes turned a bright white. All 4 students got a little bit worried at the sight of their friend's eyes turning a different color. The markings under his eyes glowed a bright light, giving off an often eerie feeling. Then, what Izuku said shocked and confused them down to their very cores. Beware the darkness of dragons. Beware the stalker of dreams. Beware the talons of power and fire. Beware the one who's not what he appears. Something is coming to shake the earth. Something is coming to scorch the ground. Jade Mountain will fall beneath thunder and ice, unless the lost city of night can be found. As Izuku finished speaking, he put his hand to his own face and winced in pain from the future. In this case, prophecy. He just told everyone in the room, Ah! Izuku let out a small grimace as he lifted his hands off of his eyes and forehead. Izuku looked up to see a familiar face looking at him in confusion. Izuku then turned to Recovery Girl to see her smiling at him and being excited at the same time. Izuku was really confused to see moon-like markings on his arm, back, and legs. All spiraling lines leading to a larger moon marking on his chest. Time Skip brought to you by Izuku trying to train and fly with his new dragon form. Izuku was in his dorm fast asleep with his friend by his side. They would wake him up if he had a nightmare. Most of his friends were tired and went back to their dorms, leaving only Katsuki, the red-haired boy. The red-haired boy was sitting in Izuku's dorm, slowly drifting to sleep until he heard Izuku mutter something in his slumber. No, please don't kill them. Katsuki's eyes widened as he looked up at Izuku and tried to shake him awake, but that didn't work either. Izuku's markings on his left side glowed an orange hue before the color began to stream up his neck to his eyes and horns, before vanishing from sight. The young Quirkless opened his eyes to reveal orange irises and a glowing mouth. The ash blonde teen looked at him in shock. Tears were streaming down his face. The next words that came from Izuku shocked him. New abilities unlocked. Beam of fire, and explosive venom. Just as he was about to try and wake him up again, the black tendrils of darkness emerged from his arm. They seemed to resemble whips, clinging to the walls like silk. And the black tendrils did not let go. What shocked Katsuki the most was the new quirk he gained. Was this because of me? He thought, as he tried to rip the black like ropes, but it did nothing. In Izuku's dream, Izuku Midoriya, we need to talk, the first user of One For All said, while sitting on a throne-like chair in front of the green net. Izuku looked around and saw the other One For All users sitting in chair-like throne chairs. Izuku was slightly confused until one of the past users of One For All spoke up. So, 9th user, you finally found out about your mutations from your heritage, and you finally unlocked Black Whip. Izuku was really confused, till he was thinking about his family history, when his thoughts were cut off by the past One For All users. Izuku Midoriya, I believe that you may not be your mother's biological son. Rather, you are from the combined tribes of Icewing, Rainwing, and Nightwing royalty, Yoichi said, while lifting his face up to make eye contact with the user. We also wanted to confess something. Izuku's eyes widened in surprise and confusion. Then before he could ask anything else, he felt himself fading away. Izuku then looked at the first user and nodded. It looks like our time is almost up, the first user said, with a smile on his face. Oh, and before you go, I hope to see you soon, nephew. This caught Izuku off guard, before he vanished and woke up with a start, as he was hyperventilating from the dream he just had. Izuku looked at his hand in surprise to see scales covering it. Then he looked up from his hand to see a very shocked Katsuki. Then, without realizing it, began to uncontrollably cry out of nowhere. He didn't know why until he felt sharp pain in his legs. They had shifted and changed into something completely known to him. Kachan, I think I'm going to be sick. Before he could finish his sentence, he started to gag and cough until he was throwing up. He threw up the leftover katsuni that he had eaten earlier. He started to scream and his body shifted, transforming into a Rainwing Icewing hybrid. His spikes grew on his back, extending to the tip of his curled tail. Izuku got scared and ran under his bed. He could see him crying tears of fear and sadness. Katsuki's eyes widened as he ran out of Izuku's dorm to go to the teachers' dorms and search for their teacher. He ran and ran until he spotted Mr. Hazawa about to go into his dorm for the night. Izuku stopped him and explained what had just happened to the young green-haired boy. Then, after he was done explaining about Izuku, Aizawa's eyes widened in concern. Both of them ran all the way to Izuku's dorm and slammed the door open to see Izuku under the bed, shaking with fear and confusion. The student and teacher were both concerned for the dragonette. Before anyone could say anything, the Ashburn student took out a mango fruit. Izuku's face paled as he stared at it in curiosity and relief. Izuku crawled out from under the bed slowly, being extremely careful around the two unfamiliar individuals. He quickly sniffed the fruit and took a bite of the vibrantly colored fruit, and immediately his skin turned the same shade as the fruit, making him appear invisible. Izuku got the urge to change the color of his scales to that of Katsuki's hero costume. His frills and spots on his face were black, while the rest of his scales were orange. Katsuki had an embarrassed blush on his face before Izuku could process anything. He was picked up by his childhood friend and carried out of his dorm room and into the common room of the building. Izuku just sat there in confusion as to why he had been placed there. Everyone was looking at him with curious expressions on their faces. Katsuki came back into the room with a dragon fruit in his hand and gave it to Izuku. Izuku's eyes widened to that of a cat when excited, and quickly took it and changed his tail color to match that of a dragon fruit. Everyone was filled with cuteness. Cover Girl entered the room, and Izuku immediately hissed. The pupils of his eyes sharpened, and his frill expanded to make himself appear more threatening and scary. But in reality, it was just cute. Bakugo approached the dragon and began to pet its head. Bakugo then whispered in his ear, "It's just Recovery Girl. She came in to check on you." His frill flattened to his head, and his eyes returned to normal. Cover Girl came up to Izuku and checked him over before turning to everyone, saying he's all good, just needs to relax and try not to stress out too much. Everyone lets out a sigh of relief and began to look at the rain-winged dragonette with curious expressions. Time skipped to the morning. As everyone sat there in the classroom, their teacher stood up and began to speak. "So, as you guys know, we've been receiving threats from villains and criminals from the past week or so. We are going to have a field trip for Class 1A and 1B because one of our students has mysteriously gained mutations from somewhere. So get ready for the trip, pack all that you need and can and will need. We will be meeting with Jade Mountain Academy students at the training camp. We will train your quirks and strengthen them to see just how far you can go. And for the ones who failed the provisional licensing exam, you will be doing provisional classes to catch up with the rest of your fellow classmates," Aizawa said, as he had his eyes closed. Meanwhile, Dinky, Todoroki, and Mina were complaining while still listening to their teacher. Time skip a week later for the field trip to the training camp and the meeting of Jade Mountain Academy students. All the students were lined up for the bus. The students were talking amongst themselves and getting back into their seats, while All Might stood in front of them, looking rather nervous as he continued to scratch his wrists. Something was telling him Something bad was about to happen. Whether it was danger sense going off, or his dragon's instincts being triggered. Bakugo could tell Izuku was worried and scared, all the while his hair and scales were changing colors. He started to rub Izuku's back in a comforting gesture. Izuku looked up at his friend and smiled, feeling grateful for the kindness. They were both silent for a moment, and then Bakugo spoke. The young dragonet looked up to his best friend and smiled at his childhood friend's kind gesture. Both of them remained silent. "Hey, Izu," he said, while breaking the silence. "I just wanted to apologize for what I said to you in middle school when we were kids. I really and truly regret everything I did and said. I wanted to apologize for what I said to you in middle school," he finished. He finished speaking and looked over to the dragonet to see him crying in tears of joy and relief. The ash blonde looked at the young dragonet in relief, and he just chuckled internally at himself. He ruffled Izuku's hair before they were interrupted by their class president, who announced it was time to get on the bus. To be continued. I hope you guys really enjoyed this chapter. Alright, I'll see you in the next video.